Welcome to Life Stories, where the quietest people often carry the heaviest truths. Imagine this. Your own father tells you not to come home because you'd make the family look bad. Not because you failed, not because you hurt anyone, but because your success is too inconvenient to explain. This is not a story about revenge. It's a story about silence, the kind that builds for years until it becomes louder than any scream. What happens when the daughter who was always overlooked becomes the one person the entire family depends on, and then walks away? Stay with us, because this journey will challenge what you believe about loyalty, identity, and the price of being the strong one. Let's begin. It was always quiet at 6 a.m. in the old part of Portland, the kind of quiet where the world hasn't decided yet whether to be kind or cruel. Eva's apartment sat tucked above a local bookstore that hadn't changed its window display in years. She liked that, the stillness, the sameness. In a world where people vanished without warning and love could evaporate over brunch, consistency felt like a miracle. She took her espresso black, no sugar, no milk, just the bitterness, undiluted. It matched the mornings she'd stopped expecting phone calls from home. At 32, Eva Prescott was the co-founder of one of the fastest-growing biotech startups in the Northeast. Pacific Genomics was her brainchild, born in the sleepless nights of grad school and raised through every funding pitch, every backhanded dismissal, every room full of men who addressed her male co-founder even when she had done the talking. But none of that mattered at Thanksgiving, or Christmas, or her mother's birthday. To her family, she was the awkward one, the one who wore flats to weddings, the one who always had her nose in a screen, not in someone's business. Her sister Madison, however, was the living portrait of what their parents thought womanhood should look like. Blonde, graceful, endlessly agreeable. Madison never had to explain her job. She didn't need to. Her boyfriends were always impressive, her outfits always polished, and her smile always camera-ready. In family photos, Eva had learned to stand just out of frame. It wasn't that she wanted attention. She didn't need it. But sometimes the silence around her was so complete it felt like suffocation. 2 years ago, Eva stopped calling home regularly, not out of spite, but out of survival. The last time she tried to talk about her company's new partnership with a major public health initiative, her father had interrupted to ask if she was still doing that science stuff. Madison, on the other hand, had just started dating a radiologist. The applause from the dinner table had been deafening, so Eva stayed away. She still sent money, quietly, without being asked. Her parents never saw the bills, but she did. Every electric, gas, water, and Wi-Fi charge auto-paid from her account like a ghost, making sure the lights stayed on in a house that had turned its back on her. But everything changed in March. Her mother's birthday was coming up, and for the first time in a long while, Eva had cleared her schedule. No meetings, no crises, just 3 days set aside to fly home, cook, and maybe for once feel like she belonged. She called ahead, a simple gesture. Her father answered, "Hey, Dad, just letting you know I'll be flying in early. Happy to help with anything, groceries, setup, whatever." There was a pause. "Eva," he said, not harshly, just carefully, like stepping around something sharp. "It might be better if you didn't come this year." She blinked. "Why?" Another pause. "Madison's bringing her new boyfriend. He's impressive. A CFO. And well, we don't want things to feel awkward." She could barely breathe. "Are you saying I'd make it awkward?" "It's just, your work is hard to explain. You're intense. Madison's really trying to make a good impression." Eva's voice dropped to a whisper. "Are you embarrassed by me?" "If you insist on coming," he said, with a calm finality that sliced through her like glass, "then don't call me your father." He hung up. She sat motionless in her chair, the espresso still warm in her hands, but her chest unbearably cold. For a moment, she thought she'd misheard. But the silence that followed was unmistakable. That night, she opened her laptop and canceled every payment she had been making on their behalf. No power, no water, no internet, not out of revenge, but because she finally understood. She had been financing a version of family that did not include her. Weeks passed. On the day of her mother's birthday, as Eva sat by the window of her apartment sipping peppermint tea, her phone buzzed. It was her mom. "Eva, the power's out. Can you check for us?" Then her dad. "No water. Call the providers. Your mom's freaking out." And finally Madison. "The internet's down. Guests are here. Mom's crying. What's going on?" Eva typed a reply. "3 weeks ago, Dad told me not to come and not to call him my father. I'm just doing what he asked. If this is inconvenient, maybe find someone you're not ashamed to introduce." She stared at the message, then deleted it. Not because it wasn't true, but because truth, when spoken by those who've been silenced too long, often gets twisted into cruelty. She didn't respond. Instead, she turned to her inbox. A new employee transfer request awaited her approval. The name caught her breath. Ryan Cole, Madison's boyfriend, incoming head of finance, reporting directly to her. She remembered him vaguely, tall, polished, a little too smooth. They had shaken hands at a biotech conference months ago. He had called her co-founder Warren, but didn't seem to connect her to Madison. Why would he? Her family never even mentioned her name. Eva didn't deny the transfer. She didn't need to. Letting life speak for her had become her quiet act of rebellion. The next day, Ryan walked into her office holding a folder. When he saw her behind the desk, he froze. "Eva?" he asked, voice trembling. She looked up, expression calm. "Welcome to Pacific Genomics. I'll be overseeing the financial strategy this quarter. Let me know if you need anything." Ryan's face went pale. He nodded stiffly and left. Eva leaned back in her chair. She wasn't triumphant. She wasn't cruel. She was simply done hiding. Was Eva wrong to stay silent, or was that silence the most powerful truth of all? What would you do if your own family valued appearances more than your presence? Next, Madison finds out who her boyfriend really works for, and the birthday party becomes a stage for a revelation no one could have predicted. The voicemail came at 11:47 p.m. Eva had just closed her laptop after reviewing a quarterly budget when her phone lit up with a notification. One new voice message from Madison. She stared at it for a moment, the tension in her shoulders refusing to loosen. It had been 3 days since Ryan stepped into her office, and her family's group chat had gone strangely silent. No complaints, no follow-ups about the blackout. Just static. She pressed play. Madison's voice cracked almost immediately. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I just need to understand something." There was a shaky inhale, followed by a pause long enough to make Eva wonder if the message had ended. Then, "Did you know? Did you know who he was before you approved the transfer? You let all of that play out. You let him walk into that room not knowing a damn thing. You let us all look stupid." Another pause. And then quieter. "Mom's been crying for 2 days. Dad won't even talk to me. Ryan left. He said he couldn't stay with someone who doesn't see people for who they really are. And I need to know. Was this your way of punishing us?" The message ended there. Eva sat still in the dark, the blue light of the screen fading as her phone dimmed. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass, unreadable. She didn't reply, because that's not what this was, at least not to her. But a part of her, buried, quiet, uncertain, asked the question anyway. Was it? On Sunday morning, Eva did something she hadn't done in over a year. She took a walk without her phone. No GPS, no emails, no calendar reminders ticking like landmines in her pocket. Just the streets of Portland, cold and gray, with damp air clinging to her coat and the scent of wet pine rising from the sidewalk. Her boots echoed softly as she walked past the bakery she used to visit with her mother, back when her mother still made space for her at the table. She paused outside a bookstore. The window display hadn't changed. A paperback version of The Art of Not Caring sat wedged between cookbooks and half-hearted poetry. The title made her smirk. She didn't feel vengeful. She felt tired. Madison's words clung to her like smoke. "You let us all look stupid." It was strange. Eva had spent years being invisible, dismissed, tolerated at best, and now that her truth was visible, it was suddenly too much. She stepped inside the bookstore, if only to warm her fingers. An older woman behind the counter glanced up and smiled without recognition, one of the small kindnesses Eva had come to treasure. She wandered toward the nonfiction aisle, her steps slow, aimless. Halfway through flipping a book on emotional resilience, her phone buzzed. She hesitated, then pulled it out. One new text, not from Madison, not from her parents, from Ryan. Eva, I just wanted to say thank you for how you handled everything. You didn't humiliate me. You gave me clarity. She stared at the message, a strange tightness forming in her chest. He continued, I ended things with Madison, not because of you, but because I realized the woman I admired wasn't her. It was the one who sat across from me in that office. Calm, capable, and unshakable. I never knew she was part of the family I was told not to ask about. Eva's fingers hovered over the screen. Then she did something unexpected. She called him. The line rang once, twice, then connected. Eva? Hi, she said, her voice level but softer than usual. You didn't owe me that message. Maybe not, he said, but I owed it to myself to say it. There was a pause. Do you regret it? He asked, letting everything play out the way it did? Eva looked around the bookstore. Dusty shelves, a sleeping cat curled up on a radiator, the quiet hum of forgotten stories. No, she said. I regret staying silent for so long, but I don't regret letting the truth speak for itself. That evening, Eva received an envelope. No return address. Just her name, written in her mother's handwriting. Inside, a letter. It wasn't an apology. It was a request. They needed financial help again, but this time it came with something unexpected. A printed contract. A proposed monthly contribution of $2,000 in exchange for full inheritance rights after both parents passed. House, land, assets. The letter ended with, we know this might feel transactional, but we're trying. We want things to be fair now. Maybe this is a start. Eva held the paper in her hands for a long time, not because of the money, but because of the sentence. We're trying. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry, because trying, from her family, had always meant convenient. Still, something inside her shifted. She folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and wrote one line in her notebook. Dignity doesn't come with terms. She would decide what happened next, on her terms. Have you ever been offered something too late, when the damage was already done? What would you do if the people who hurt you finally tried, but only after losing their power over you? Next, Eva faces a choice that could either rewrite her future or prove that some bridges, once burned, should never be rebuilt. A week after the letter arrived, Eva found herself standing in front of the house she had spent most of her childhood trying to feel at home in. The porch light flickered faintly, one of those things that had probably been broken for years, but no one ever bothered to fix. The steps still creaked in the same places. The garden was neat, almost too neat, as if it had been trimmed out of guilt. She hadn't planned on coming. She told herself she'd written her answer already. She told herself she was done. But the letter, "We're trying," had sunk in deeper than she expected. Eva had always believed that forgiveness was a door you could walk back through. But now, standing at the edge of that threshold, she wasn't sure the house on the other side was worth re-entering. She knocked once, twice. Her mother opened the door. She looked smaller than Eva remembered. Tired, thinner, not broken, but dimmed. Eva, she said softly, like saying her name was a privilege she wasn't sure she still had. I won't stay long, Eva said, but I needed to look you both in the eye. They sat at the kitchen table. Her father joined a minute later, his expression guarded, his hands clasped too tightly. The room smelled like lemon cleaner and old coffee. Eva placed the folded contract on the table. I read it, she said, and I understand the intention. But if you think money is what I wanted from this family, then you never really knew me at all. Her mother's lips parted slightly, but Eva raised a hand. I'm not angry, she continued, but you need to hear this. She turned to her father. You told me not to come home because I'd embarrass you. You told me if I insisted not to call you my father. So I didn't. I respected your request. And when the power went out and no one could cook dinner, I didn't gloat. I didn't show up. I stayed home and said nothing. Her father's jaw tightened. But still he didn't speak. And now, Eva said, you want to rewrite it all with a check and a contract. Her voice didn't rise, it didn't shake, but it filled the room like thunder. I needed love, she said. I needed someone to ask me if I was okay. I needed someone to say, we see you, Eva. We're proud of you. Not when I made headlines, not when my name was attached to a major deal. Just because I was your daughter. A long silence followed. Then her mother spoke, her voice brittle. We didn't know how. We thought you didn't need us. You always looked so composed. Eva smiled, but it was tired. I was composed because I had no choice. You praised Madison for every outfit, every boyfriend, every birthday cake, and I got silence. Her father finally looked at her. For the first time in years, really looked. You think I don't regret it? He said quietly. I watched the screen that day, watched Ryan call you his boss, and I felt like the ground opened beneath me. Not because I was ashamed, but because I realized I'd never asked what you actually do. I knew nothing about my own daughter. A beat passed. I was proud, he added, and ashamed that it took a stranger to make me see it. Eva let the words wash over her, not ready to trust them, but no longer needing to argue. Her mother reached across the table and placed her hand on Eva's. It was small, cold, and trembling. We hurt you, she whispered, but we want to try, even if it's too late. Eva looked down at her mother's hand, then back up. I'm not here to punish anyone, she said, but I won't be the one holding everything together anymore. Not through money, not through silence. She stood up. I'm not signing the contract. Her parents looked startled. But, Eva added, I'll send you one. They blinked. My version, she said. It won't be about money. It'll be about expectations, boundaries, respect. You won't be able to call me for bills if you're not willing to ask how I'm doing. You won't see me at birthdays unless you can accept who I am without shame. Her voice was clear now, steady, not cruel, just certain. I'm willing to begin again, she said, but only if we're building something real, not this performance we've been pretending is family. No one argued. She walked to the door, opened it, and paused. One more thing, she said. Tell Madison she doesn't need to reach out. I forgive her, but I don't owe her my energy anymore. Her mother stood, but said nothing. Her father remained seated, his shoulders slumped in a way Eva had never seen before. She stepped outside into the chill of early evening. The air smelled of moss and the first bloom of spring. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like closure. A month later, Eva sat on her balcony, watching the sky darken into indigo. Ryan had settled into his role quietly, respectfully. They didn't talk about the past, not even once. But sometimes, when their meetings ended, there was a look in his eyes, a quiet kind of gratitude that needed no words. Eva's parents never replied to her contract, but they started sending short messages, hope you're well, or thinking of you today. Nothing more. She didn't expect an apology. She didn't need one anymore. Because healing, she'd learned, doesn't always come as a grand gesture. Sometimes it comes as silence that no longer stings. Sometimes it comes as a quiet afternoon where you don't feel like a burden in your own life. And sometimes it comes in the form of a story, one you finally take the pen back for, one you write, not to prove anything, but simply to be free. What part of Eva's journey resonated most with you, and why? If you love this story, comment 100 below. Tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for watching Life Stories.